My name's Emily Rhodes. I'm 38, live in the suburbs outside of Dayton, Ohio, and I've always been the responsible one in my family, which is just a polite way of saying I'm the one who gets called when someone else sets fire to their own life and suddenly needs a couch and a non-judgmental ear. This time, it was my brother-in-law, Jason. My sister Melanie's now ex. She finally divorced him after years of red flags turned into full-blown five-alarm blazes. Gambling, mostly. Online poker, sports betting, crypto, investments that somehow always needed a second chance. You name it. The final straw was when he borrowed money against their house to cover a hot streak and lost everything in a single night betting on an MMA fight he was drunk enough to think was scripted. Melanie kicked him out. Rightfully so. But guess who he called to crash with just until I get back on my feet? Yeah, me. Not his parents, who live 15 minutes away. Not any of his poker buddies. Not even his cousin Mark, who once owed Jason money and probably fakes his own death every time Jason texts. He called me. And I said yes. Rick, my husband, is a softie. Bleeds sympathy like it's an autoimmune disorder. When Jason showed up at our front door with a trash bag full of clothes and a cooler of thawing chicken thighs, I swear to God, like a goddamn bachelor bear, Rick was already halfway down to the basement, pulling out blankets. Meanwhile, I was standing there in my Target work flats, stunned that this man had the audacity to walk in with the same grin he wore at our wedding, the one where he made a toast and accidentally called me Marissa, his high school girlfriend. I said he could stay for 2 months. 8 weeks. 60 days. That was the deal. And Jason said, "You won't even know I'm here." Oh, but I would. We had a finished basement. Guest bathroom, futon, old TV, even a kitchenette left over from the previous owners who ran a baking business from home. It was more comfortable than the first apartment Rick and I rented after college. And it took Jason exactly 3 days to start treating it like a frat house crossed with a startup incubator. At first, it was little things. Empty beer cans left on the washer. Late night calls I could hear through the vent, talking about drops, flipping volume, and someone named Nino who doesn't K around with Venmo. One morning, I found my good bath towels shoved into a gym bag that reeked of vape juice and fried chicken. And then he ate the kids' dinosaur nuggets. You do not mess with a mother's emergency dino nuggets. I tried to talk to Rick. He just said Jason was in transition. I told him so is menopause, but we don't let that live in the basement either. 2 months came and went. Jason didn't leave. He barely even noticed. By month 3, he was wearing Rick's hoodies, hogging the Wi-Fi, and ordering mystery boxes off Amazon like it was a full-time job. And the worst part? Rick started defending him. That's when I knew. Jason wasn't the only one who needed to get back on his feet. They both needed a wake-up call. And I was going to be the one ringing the bell. It started with the dryer sheets. I remember that clearly. I opened the laundry chute and got hit with a smell I can only describe as a mix of Axe body spray, weed, and warm gym socks. Not exactly the scent of a man getting his life together. I walked down into the basement, my basement, and there was Jason, sitting shirtless on the futon with a bag of popcorn balanced on his stomach, watching YouTube videos of people opening rare Pokemon cards like it was the State of the Union. I asked if he was doing laundry. Nope, he said, not even looking at me. Just freshening up the air with a few sheets. Smells chill, right? No, Jason. It did not smell chill. It smelled like teenage regrets and court-mandated community service. Now, I need to explain something. I work for a property management company. I deal with leases, evictions, small claims court, the whole 9 yards. So I know how people treat places they don't pay for. But watching it happen in your own home is a different beast. Jason hadn't paid a single cent. Not for groceries, not for electricity, Not for water, and definitely not for the streaming services he kept adding profiles to. Yes, I changed my Netflix password. Yes, he texted Rick about it. Yes, Rick gave it back to him. He was contributing absolutely nothing, unless you count his charming habit of leaving wet towels in the hallway and using our guest hand soap as shampoo. And yet he had money. I saw it. New shoes. Not from Target, real designer stuff. A new watch. Packages arriving almost daily. Boxes from Amazon, eBay, and once, sketchy gray packaging with Cyrillic writing and a customs declaration I was afraid to touch. He had this little operation going, but it was always between gigs or part of a flip, or just some side hustle. I started noticing how often he'd say the word flip. He'd flip shoes, cards, graphics cards, even once tried to explain how he was flipping domain names. The only thing Jason ever successfully flipped was the bird when someone called out his bullshit. But what really made my eye twitch was how Rick started eating it up. Rick, my solid, Midwestern, spreadsheet-loving husband, started defending the guy like Jason was the second coming of Elon Musk. Emily, he's trying. You just don't see the hustle. The hustle. I snapped one night while scrubbing ranch dressing off the stair railing Jason had apparently used as a napkin. Rick, the man eats chicken wings shirtless in our guest towels and sells imaginary products on Instagram. He's not hustling. He's squatting. Rick didn't answer. He just went down to the garage, where Jason was already setting up his workspace, which consisted of a folding table, a cracked laptop, and a whiteboard that said crypto is life. That night, I laid awake and stared at the ceiling fan. 3 months. 90 days. This wasn't temporary anymore. Jason was worming his way into my house, my routine, my marriage. He had to go. But I realized something important. Men like Jason? You don't just evict them. You expose them. And lucky for me, he was about to hand me everything I needed on a silver, stolen, platter. You ever have one of those moments where the universe just hands you a gift? Mine came in the form of a half-printed sheet of paper stuck in our home printer. It was a Tuesday. I'd just gotten off a virtual meeting with my regional manager and needed to print a lease agreement. The printer, which lives in the upstairs office, my office, started chugging along and then just stopped. I walked in expecting a jam or some low-toner drama. But no, it wasn't my document. It was Jason's. And what I saw made my stomach drop and my fingers tingle with the kind of excitement usually reserved for watching cheaters get caught on hidden camera shows. At the top of the page, transfer confirmation, amount $9,750. Sender, J. Rhodes. Recipient, Silverwind Media Solutions, LLC. First of all, Jason couldn't spell silver without autocorrect. Second, what the hell was Silverwind Media Solutions? I Googled it. It took me down a rabbit hole so deep I had to come up for air and snacks. Shell companies. Offshore accounts. Fraud allegations in 3 states. Turns out, Silverwind had been linked to multiple IRS alerts for suspected money laundering through e-commerce front stores. I was standing in my office with a piece of paper that connected my brother-in-law to a literal fraud ring. And he printed it on my printer. He didn't even delete it from the print queue. Just left it there like a moron. I opened the printer history. There were 10 more documents, PayPal business summaries, tax form PDFs, wiring instructions. All printed under his username, Jason Baller 88. Because of course that's what he called himself. That night, while Rick was watching some fantasy football recap show and Jason was downstairs working on a client proposal, I quietly downloaded the print logs to a USB drive. I also started taking screenshots of his deliveries and logged every package he received with photos and timestamps. I felt like I was running a sting operation out of my linen closet. And you know what? It felt good. Really good. Every time I passed him in the hallway, I smiled. "Hey, Jason. Need anything?" He'd flash that greasy little grin. "Nah, Emily. Just grinding, you know." Oh, I knew. He thought he was running some high-level operation from my basement. In reality, he'd just left breadcrumbs all over my house, like a clumsy criminal in a cartoon. Now, I had to be smart. I couldn't just confront him. That would tip my hand. And if there's one thing Jason loved more than money, it was the chance to play victim. No, I needed to play dumb a little longer. Let him feel comfortable. Let him feel untouchable. Let him keep printing his dirty secrets upstairs while bragging about his consulting income downstairs. And I'd be there, collecting every single receipt. Here's the thing about men like Jason. They think they're sharks, but they swim like goldfish in a koi pond, big mouths, short memory, and absolutely no awareness of the glass walls around them. I wasn't going to kick him out. Not yet. I was going to gut him. By now, I had a thick folder on my desktop labeled Old Taxes, which, in reality, was a neatly organized compilation of Jason's crimes, arranged in alphabetical order: fraud, laundering, unreported income, fake business registrations. There were screenshots, PDFs, delivery logs, one very suspicious invoice for consulting, physical inventory management, cash only, billed to a guy named Ray No-Face Torres, and a video clip I managed to snag of him boasting on the phone about getting the IRS off his back by creating losses on paper. I hadn't shown Rick any of it. I needed him neutral for now. The opportunity presented itself when Jason made a rookie mistake. I was chopping vegetables one night when Rick came in and casually mentioned, "Jason says he might be bringing on a couple investors for a new side hustle." Something about dropship arbitrage. Sounded like it had legs. He said it like Jason was pitching a food truck. Not fraudulent investment schemes, which, in Ohio, by the way, fall under revised Code 1707.44, which makes it a felony to sell unregistered securities, aka investment opportunities that don't exist and aren't backed by anything real. Jason was about to commit another crime. And this time, I was going to walk him right into it. So I did what any passive-aggressively enraged woman with administrative skills and a wireless printer would do. I made myself into a fake investor. Using a Gmail alias, I created Erica Lane, a freelancer in digital marketing with $10,000 to invest in something exciting. A profile picture from a stock website, one of those non-threatening women laughing at salad, and a burner phone number from a free VoIP app. Then I casually brought it up over dinner. "I've been thinking about diversifying," I told Jason, swirling my wine and trying to look intrigued. "I heard people are flipping stuff online. You know anyone doing that?" He perked up like I'd just rubbed a lamp. "Oh, totally. It's what I'm doing. I'm scaling a few back-end projects. Low risk, high yield, but I keep it lean, like friends and family only." I blinked at him. Could I get in on it? He laughed and slapped the counter. "Emily, I didn't know you had the appetite." "Sure. 10 grand gets you in. I'll walk you through it after the weekend. Let's build you some passive income, girl." "Perfect," I said. "I'm serious." He winked at me and went back downstairs, probably to DM one of his burner accounts. That night, Erica Lane emailed him. And within 24 hours, I had Jason's investment pitch in writing. He attached a fake term sheet, described a reseller circuit, promised a 25% return in 2 months, and even signed it J. Rhodes, founder, Rhodes Global Commerce. "Y'all," I screamed. He thought he was conning me. What he didn't know was that Erica had already forwarded everything to the Ohio Department of Commerce, Division of Securities. My trap was set. But I wasn't done. The next move was to make sure when he fell, he thought Rick helped push him. Because nothing tastes better than betrayal, from inside the house. I filed the report the next morning. I brewed a fresh pot of coffee, sat at my kitchen island like a suburban Nancy Drew, and logged onto the IRS Whistleblower Office submission portal. It's dry as hell, gray fonts, bold headers, a form that looks like it was built in 2006, but baby, it works. Under nature of violation, I wrote, unreported business income, online product flipping, fraudulent investment pitches, likely securities violations. Subject is operating multiple shell entities out of a residential address without tax registration. Then I attach the evidence. Every fake invoice, every bank transfer, the investment offer Jason sent to Erica Lane. Me, all of it. I even added a note about the frequent USPS packages that might be used in a mail fraud scheme. Because when you go to war, you empty the clip. Then I hit submit. I sat there, listening to the soft gurgle of the coffee maker and the hum of the fridge, and felt high. Like I'd just bench-pressed all the emotional labor I'd been carrying for 3 months and won. Not petty, not impulsive, just deliberate. But one submission wasn't enough. No. The IRS might take a while, but the Ohio Department of Commerce doesn't screw around when someone starts selling fake securities, especially not with documentation. So Erica Lane struck again. She forwarded Jason's investment pitch to the Ohio Securities Fraud Hotline with a short note. Not sure if this is legit, but he promised a 25% return in 2 months. It seemed off. He also mentioned taking funds from multiple people. Can you look into it? I even changed the formatting on the email to make it look like it came from an iPhone, typos and all. Then I printed everything. Yes, printed. Because I wanted hard copies for what came next. You see, I didn't just want him in trouble. I wanted Jason to panic. So I staged it. One afternoon, while he was out meeting a client Reed, loitering in the vape shop parking lot, I dropped an unmarked manila envelope on the basement stairs. Inside, a copy of the wire transfer, a screenshot of the securities division site with the words penalties for unregistered investment offers circled in red, and a note. You're being watched. Sleep well. I didn't sign it. He found it that evening. I was upstairs folding laundry when I heard the footsteps, fast, heavy, panicked, pounding up the stairs. He burst into the kitchen like Kramer in a Coke bender. Emily, he said, holding the envelope. Did you see this? Did someone come by? I blinked. What is that? He narrowed his eyes. You didn't see anyone drop this off? I shrugged. I was in the laundry room. Why? Jason stared at me like he couldn't decide if I was lying or just dense. His jaw worked, his forehead beaded with sweat. No reason. Probably a prank. Sure, Jason. Because federal securities fraud accusations show up like chain letters. He didn't sleep that night. I know, because I heard him pacing downstairs like a caged raccoon from midnight to 4 a.m. Let the games begin. It was 7:13 a.m. on a Thursday when the doorbell rang. Not a knock. Not the FedEx guy. A bell. The kind of ding that feels like a judge's gavel when you're hiding something. I was in the kitchen in slippers and a bathrobe, buttering toast and humming along to some true crime podcast. Ironic, I know. Rick was still upstairs, groggy. The kids were at a sleepover. Jason? Fast asleep in the basement, or so I thought. I opened the door and found 3 people standing on my porch, 2 men in windbreakers and a woman in a navy blazer, all with clipped, serious expressions. Badges visible. Not police. Not FBI. Ohio Department of Taxation, Special Investigations Division. Good morning, ma'am. We're looking for a Jason Rhodes. Is he here? I blinked. Yeah. Downstairs. And then I stepped aside like I was inviting them to look at my new backsplash. The lead guy handed me a document. Search warrant. specifically for records related to unauthorized financial activity, suspected tax fraud, and securities violations. Basement's all his, I said, folding the warrant and placing it neatly on the entryway table. Now, let me tell you something about watching justice happen in real time. It's slow. It's quiet. It's surgical. They didn't yell. They didn't cuff him on the spot. They walked downstairs, and within 30 seconds, I heard him try to laugh. "Oh, hey, this about that affiliate thing? I swear I filed." No one laughed back. Then I heard the clatter of a desk drawer, some papers shifting, and Jason's voice cracking as he tried to sound casual. "Listen, I've got, receipts. Just give me a sec. I can explain all this." They weren't interested in explanations. They were collecting evidence. Rick came stumbling down in his t-shirt and boxers, hair sticking up, eyes wide. "What's going on?" I handed him the warrant like it was a breakfast menu. "Your brother's getting audited. Maybe prosecuted. They're from the state." Rick stared at the agents, then at me, then back toward the basement. "Are you serious?" "They have a warrant, Rick." Jason came upstairs in handcuffs 20 minutes later. They weren't tight, just precautionary, but you could tell it was the first time he'd worn them without buying them at a bachelorette store as a joke. His eyes met mine, wide and stunned, pupils twitching like he was trying to process how the hell this all went sideways. "You did this," he hissed. I didn't blink. "You did this to yourself." He opened his mouth like he wanted to say more, some excuse, some desperate final plea, but the officer nudged him toward the porch. They guided him down the steps as gently as someone like Jason deserves, which is to say, not very. Rick stood behind me, shell-shocked. He looked 10 years older. His mouth opened, closed, opened again. "You knew something was going on," he finally muttered. I nodded. "Yep. Why didn't you tell me?" I turned, took a long sip of my coffee, and said, "Because you wouldn't have believed me." He didn't respond. And that silence? That was the crack forming in the foundation. Jason had gone down. Now it was time to make sure no one ever let him back up. After they took Jason away, the house was quiet. Not peaceful. Just unnaturally quiet. Like the air was holding its breath, waiting for someone to yell or break a plate or try to gaslight me into believing none of this was happening. I stood in the kitchen, finishing my now cold coffee while Rick stared at the front door like it might apologize to him. His shoulders were slumped forward, hands on his hips. I don't think he'd blinked in a full minute. I broke the silence. "Do you want eggs or just cereal?" He blinked slowly, like he'd just been asked about string theory. I'm not hungry. Suit yourself." I cracked 2 into the pan. Rick shuffled into a chair and finally asked, "How long did you know?" I didn't turn around. "Long enough." "Long enough to do what?" "Collect evidence. Report him. Trigger the audit." He coughed. "Wait. You reported him?" I finally turned, spatula in hand. "Did you think someone else cared enough to go to the trouble? You've seen his friends. Half of them can't spell fraud, and the other half are already wanted in 3 counties. He didn't answer. Just rubbed his temple and stared at the floor. And here's the thing, I didn't feel bad. Not even a little. I watched my husband, the man I married because he used to bring me tea when I pulled all-nighters, sit there and grapple with the fact that his hero of a brother had been using our house as a cover for tax evasion and probably wire fraud. Meanwhile, I'd been the one grocery shopping, keeping the kids fed, covering the mortgage, and trying not to scream into a dish towel every time Jason left crumbs in the butter dish. "You should have told me," Rick said, quietly. I shrugged. "You would have told him. And then he'd have vanished before they showed up." He opened his mouth to object, but then stopped. Because he knew I was right. And he hated it. I plated my eggs and sat down across from him, fork clinking lightly against ceramic. He watched me eat like I was performing a magic trick. He's your brother, I said between bites. I get it. You wanted to believe in him. But you didn't even look. You trusted him over me. Rick let that sit there. It might have been the first time he realized that. He looked smaller somehow. Like a kid caught cheating on a test. He's facing felony charges, Rick, I added. Multiple. This isn't going to be fixed with an apology and a loan from your parents. Rick leaned forward, elbows on the table. Are you going to tell the kids? I paused. No. Not yet. Let's wait for the arraignment. And just like that, I'd said it out loud. Like we were just talking about a dentist appointment. Like this wasn't a nuclear bomb that had gone off under our home. Jason was gone. Rick was unraveling. And I'd never felt more in control. If you've ever burned your whole hand trying to swat a mosquito, you know what it feels like dealing with my sister, Melanie. Because of course Melanie found out. Not from me. Not from Rick. Definitely not from Jason. He was too busy sitting in county jail trying to convince a public defender that Rhodes Global Commerce was a real company. She found out the modern way, Facebook. Rick's aunt posted a vague prayers up status with a sad face and the words, "Sometimes the people we love make big mistakes. Stay strong, family." That was all it took. By that evening, Melanie had posted a 10-slide Instagram story, complete with lo-fi piano music, detailing the injustice of her ex-husband being framed by vengeful people who couldn't understand his dreams. She called it an attack on his character by someone within the home. You know, me. She never said my name. She didn't need to. I started getting passive-aggressive texts from distant cousins who haven't seen Jason since he tried to sell them crypto at Grandma's funeral. One even had the nerve to message, "We all make mistakes, Em. Maybe this should have been handled in private." Private? The man was committing federal crimes under my laundry room. I'm not calling Judge Judy, I'm calling the state. So I did what any emotionally exhausted, half-petty, half-righteous woman would do. I sent Melanie a birthday card. It was 3 days after her big online sob story. I knew she'd be expecting sympathy, or at least some performative family loyalty. Instead, she got this. Front. Wishing you a year full of surprises. Inside. But maybe not the kind that end in handcuffs. Taped to the inside was a photocopy of the deed to Jason's Camaro, complete with the State of Ohio seizure notice sticker still on the windshield in the corner of the image. Just beneath that, I wrote in my neatest, most cursive handwriting. Since you loved riding shotgun in his mess, I figured you'd want a memento. Emily. I mailed it first class. No tracking. No return address. Just clean, undetectable precision. A ghost letter from the wife she tried to humiliate for years with backhanded compliments and snide remarks at Thanksgiving. She didn't post another story after that. But I did get a text. Blocked number. Probably a burner. All it said was, "You're sick. You destroyed a family." To which I said out loud, in my kitchen, to no one in particular, "No, sweetie. I saved one." Rick read the card after the fact. He didn't say a word. He just shook his head once, slow, like a man finally realizing that he'd married a woman who doesn't throw punches, she places them. Melanie went quiet. Jason stayed inside county walls. And I poured a glass of wine, sat by the window, and watched the last Amazon box addressed to Jason sit on the porch in the rain until it wilted into pulp. Some things just don't belong in this house anymore. 3 weeks after Jason got hauled out of my house in cuffs, Rick finally asked the question that had been twitching at the corner of his mouth since the moment the door slammed shut. Did you ever think about just asking him to leave? We were sitting at the kitchen table. I was meal planning. He was peeling the label off a beer bottle like it owed him money. I looked up, deadpan. I did. 4 times. He blinked. You did. Once in December. Twice in January. The 4th time, I think I whispered it into my pillow while imagining setting his sneakers on fire. Rick leaned back in his chair. Why didn't you tell me it was that bad? Because you were too busy letting him wear your hoodies and gaslight me about the electric bill. He didn't argue. Credit where it's due, Rick had finally entered the acceptance phase of grief, realizing his brother was not a misunderstood genius, just a greasy little tax-dodging parasite who played Call of Duty until 3 a.m. and used networking as an excuse to loiter at vape shops. Jason's arraignment was set for the following Monday. He was being charged with multiple counts: tax evasion, unlicensed business activity, attempted securities fraud. Apparently, that little investment deal with Erica Lane, aka me, had crossed more lines than even I realized. I was quietly thrilled to learn that his dumbass had written guaranteed return in the pitch email, which is a massive no-no under both federal and Ohio law. That one word, guaranteed, makes it a fraudulent promise by definition. Anyway, Jason pled not guilty, of course. His public defender tried to argue that Jason had no intent to defraud, that he was just experimenting with entrepreneurship. The judge was not impressed. Rick came with me to the hearing. He didn't have to. He asked to. He said he needed to see it for himself, to believe it, to face it, and maybe, in some quiet way, to apologize without actually saying the words. I didn't dress to impress. I wore black slacks, a gray cardigan, and sensible flats. I wanted to look like exactly what I was, the woman who knew everything, but didn't need to prove it anymore. Jason looked awful. Orange jumpsuit, shackled ankles, eyes sunken, hair like it had been styled by a ceiling fan. He saw me sitting in the gallery, tried to sneer, but it didn't land. The smirk collapsed into something else, recognition. He knew now. The game was over. And the person who'd beaten him? The same woman he once called uptight for making labeled bins in the pantry. I smiled. Just a little. When it was over, Rick and I walked to the parking lot in silence. Halfway to the car, he stopped. I'm sorry, he said. I turned. For what? For not seeing it sooner. For not having your back. I nodded, just once. Thank you. We didn't say much more that day. We didn't need to. That weekend, I went into the basement with a roll of painter's tape and a screwdriver. I took down every poster, every leftover shelf, every stupid neon sign Jason had hung that said things like hustle harder and money never sleeps. By Sunday afternoon, the walls were bare. I stood in the center of the room, looked around, and smiled. Welcome back, I whispered. Not to Jason. To myself. I turned the basement into a library. Not a fancy mahogany-shelved reading room with a ladder and a rolling globe, just a clean, quiet place with warmth in the walls again. Soft amber light. A rug thick enough to swallow bare feet. Shelves I put up myself, one by one, and filled with books I'd been storing in boxes for years, while Jason used the space for dropshipping logistics. There's a chair in the corner now. Big, navy blue, soft as a cloud, positioned next to a second-hand lamp I found at a thrift store for $12. I call it my throne because why not? The woman who survived this circus deserves a place to sit. Jason was sentenced to 18 months in federal custody, plus 3 years of supervised release. That's after the state agreed to drop 2 smaller charges in exchange for a guilty plea. The judge called his crimes a pathetic and arrogant attempt to game a system he didn't understand. I wanted to frame that quote. Melanie tried to start another smear campaign online. She posted something about family betrayal and power-hungry women. I didn't even bother clapping back. Let her wear that crown of delusion alone. I sent her one more card, though. Not for her birthday this time. For Thanksgiving. Front. So grateful this year. Inside. That I didn't let a man with a crypto pyramid scheme poop in my guest bathroom for a 4th month. Wishing you clarity, court-ordered financial literacy classes, and a better taste in men. Love, Emily. Rick and I are steady now. We've done therapy. We've unpacked some things. I won't lie, there was a week where I thought about leaving. But he showed up. He took the hard feedback. He got his spine back. Sometimes he brings me wine in the library at night while I'm curled in the chair with a book, and he'll say something like, "Remember when we thought Jason just needed a break?" And I'll say, "Yeah, I gave him a break. Just not the kind he expected." He laughs now. Real laughs. Not nervous, not trying to explain anyone's behavior. Just acceptance. The kids don't ask about Uncle Jason anymore. And me? I finally exhaled. I threw out the last box with his name on it last week. It had a cracked wireless speaker, 2 mismatched socks, and a USB drive I didn't bother checking. I dropped it in the trash with zero fanfare. Because this story doesn't end with a bang. It ends with peace. Peace is the quiet sound of your house when the wrong people are gone. It's the weight that's missing when you realize you've stopped apologizing for taking up space in your own home. It's eating dinner at your kitchen table, sipping wine from your own glass, with your husband beside you, and no one's freeloading from the fridge or stealing the damn Wi-Fi. And most of all, peace is sitting in that basement chair, legs tucked under you and thinking, "God, I should have done this sooner."